It is my primary belief. The value of all of this is that we as workers and leaders need to understand, culture, organizational culture. People understand it, they embrace it, they understand what they're attracted to it. But the question is what does it really mean, and what do you really do about it? So culture is really an important concept. And I'm just going to tell you a quick story. You've had a meeting with somebody where you've gone to their office and you sit down in their office, or even someone maybe at your work, or somewhere in a professional setting. You go to a meeting and the meeting feels great, it goes fine, but you leave and you have a bad sense. You're not sure. You don't trust, or there's something that's just not lining up right in your brain. You don't know exactly what it is, but your intuition is telling you that something's wrong, or something's different, or something's not aligned. That is what you're feeling, is your culture. You're feeling their culture. You're feeling the values of that organization, their norms, behaviors, symbols. You're feeling those things that somehow is giving you a vibe, right? That allows you to act. We all understand this. This is something that's real. So when we think about, there's a book by Yuval Noah Harari called *Sapien*, which maybe some of you have read. It's a fantastic book. It takes you from the beginning of human history till to today, and talks about our nature, human nature, how we evolved, and how do we organize ourselves, and how do we think, and how do we behave, and the kind of the premise is pretty much with most of that that body of work is that human beings are basically 3 meals away from total chaos, right? Like we are animals through and through, and that we will we kind of have this nature, and that nature is what it is. There's a new book out by David Grober and David Wingrow called *Dawn of Everything*, which is the same kind of book. It's talking about history, but almost talking about it more in just societies. And it's got a different view. It basically says that human beings are basically good. We're good. Our nature is good, right? Which I've always believed. I always believed that we're born knowing what is right. Children know what's not wrong, and even as adults, we know what's not right, and we know what's wrong. Like we know the difference between those things. We know the difference between being fair and not fair. It's almost like innate in our biology. So their argument is we're not just animals, and so on and so forth. What's important about that is both of these authors, or all of these authors, talk about our nature. So we have a human nature, and the human nature, it's almost like written in our DNA what kind of things we're gonna do, and how we're gonna think about things, and what are we gonna be afraid of, and what are we gonna be excited about, and what do we want, and those things are kind of innate, right? There's also so that nature might inform our behavior. Okay, so let's just look at it that way. So from the bottom you have human nature, and the next level you have behavior, the behavior of our nature, right? Now, if you look at this from a higher level, or from a more of a macro level, right? We live in a climate, and the climate is the environmental things that are affecting us, right? So the environmental things are those things that, what do we eat? How do we, what are the resources that we have? Where do we live? I mean, all these things have an impact, right? How are our families contrived? All this other stuff. And so between this climate, which is the high environmental stuff, and this lower behavior and nature stuff, there's something in the middle, which is the thing that controls all, which is the thing that pivots between the climate and the behavior, and that is culture. You could say we have human beings. We have human beings that work in a company, and they have a nature. They want to eat. They want to have good family life. They want to go to church. Whatever that stuff is, they're driven by these kind of internal things that they want to do. They also have personalities, and personalities can be different, right? But even though they have different personalities, it really might affect their behavior. But the nature and the personality kind of creates some general foundation of behavior, right? And I believe generally they're good, right? Now you're working let's say you're working in an environment like, you're working in healthcare, right? You're working in healthcare. The environment of healthcare is the system's really not doing that well. We don't have, don't necessarily have the best healthcare system that works for all of us in a good way, right? And this isn't a criticism of any of that. I'm just saying it's not optimal, right? We can agree to that, right? That's kind of the environment. That's kind of the climate. Healthcare is within a climate, which is institutions that control it, insurance companies, practitioners, all that stuff, right? So between that healthcare climate and the behaviors of these really good people with natures is the culture. Now, if you walk into a healthcare organization that doesn't have a good culture, you know it. You have attrition, you have serious problems, right? You walk into a healthcare organization that has a great culture, right? And I can show you, so I can share several examples of that, really great cultures where people are committed, they're treated fairly, they have to work within the parameters of healthcare, they have to follow the rules and the laws and do everything they're supposed to do, right? But there's something magic that's going on with the culture where it engages people, the behavior is brought out, and it becomes really profound and really valuable, right? And there's lots of examples like that. So just the way to think about this is culture is the pivot point between climate and environment and behavior and human nature. So if a company wants to be successful, it really can't tinker with the environment. It can't change the industry laws. You can't change banking necessarily. Banking is banking, right? You can't change banking. You can't change the law. That's going to be there, right? And you have lawyers that you have these professional bankers and accountants and lawyers that go to school to learn those skills, and they're good people, and they have personalities, and they have a nature, and they want to be productive, and they want to learn. And then they go to a firm that either meets that need, right, and pivots between those two things in a productive way, or doesn't pivot in a productive way. We all have examples of that. If you've had a job where it was this wasn't matching with you, right, or you didn't feel like you fit into that particular culture, right, you would feel it. If you worked in a company or a group and you really felt part of the team and you felt whatever those things are, it was fulfilling for you, right, it would be more of a successful organization. The point is that culture is the key thing, and what we have to realize is that the dynamics here are changing. So the environmental considerations of the climates are changing all around us, and I can go through that in some detail. And now when our nature's not changing, but our behaviors and norms are shifting, right? Our motivations are changing. The things that fulfill us, our values are shifting, and they're shifting to being more fulfilled, right? So what has to happen is the leadership and the culture of those organizations need to meet those motivations.